What in the... Captain, there's a fireball in the sky.
Black holes. Did you see that? Look, there's not enough room in this tower for two sarcastic hullheads, so one of us has to knock it off. Right. I reckon we both know who that'll fall to. Oh well, a pity for the crew, but I can't see how it affects me. Hiram? Can you hear me? Did you see that? Architect, save me from swindlers and fools. Sanjar, what are you bloody doing on my channel? Did MSI or did MSI not cease broadcasting?
Hey there, Space Monkeys. My name's Elijah, and Dan's here today. And we're doing
Hello.
something a little bit different. We're going to be giving you our impressions of the new release, The Outer Worlds by Obsidian.
Yep, we've been enjoying it over the past couple of weeks, you'd say?
Yeah, definitely. We played it day one, and we've been kind of taking our time with it.
Yeah, but Eli's actually finished the game, which is great. And you have a blog post up on, is it your website?
Yeah, it's actually, it'll be up on my personal site, which I will link down below. It's about 1,800 words. It's a 7-minute read, so it's pretty, it's a decent clip. Gives you my full thoughts, and we'll probably get into some of them here, but if you want to read everything I have to say, you can find it there.
Yeah, and I've played the game for about 20 hours altogether, but I haven't beaten it. But I have gotten, I would say, a far ways through. Eli, you'd say I've gotten about halfway, maybe?
I'd say you're approaching 3/4 of the way.
If I were to give my general impressions in a word, it's a good game. It's a good game. I would recommend it to certain friends.
Yeah, I think my overall is that it's a very competent game, but I don't think it's as groundbreaking as it's been framed by a lot of the review outlets.
I guess I had such high expectations from even, Game Informer, IGN, just the big names reviewing the game. They just thought it was stellar.
Yeah, and there's definitely some really stellar pieces about it. I think the world building, how fresh the IP is, and some other elements of it, I think are really good, even approaching that stellar category. I think the people who went and wrote the lore entries, the communications between people, even some of the side quests are really good, but I don't think that it's anything that we haven't really seen before. It's better than some of the Fallout stuff that I've played by far, and even Skyrim in that sense, but the gameplay just doesn't totally land for me, so it feels like it's worth its time. It's really competent.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to put my finger on the things that don't seem to be working and make me like the game less. So hopefully this conversation will help me understand that a little bit more.
What did you feel when you first started playing the game? We both started playing it together, but what was kind of going through your head as we were playing?
What is my build gonna be? That was the first question that I had. What am I going to be an expert at? And the things that I wanted to choose were long range shooting with some dialogue stuff, and I wanted to be really smart. So that's sort of how I crafted my character. And then I thought, well, how can I make sure that I don't do anything that would make me close certain doors within the game's narrative or quest or something like that, so that I wouldn't lose an opportunity to play something in the game. Those were sort of my concerns and thoughts. But what about you, Eli?
Yeah, I think on my end, I was really taken aback by how much it actually felt like jumping into Borderlands for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in my review that I wrote, I basically said that Obsidian basically like looked at the Borderlands formula and said, we can make this better, minus the millions of random guns, but just the overall atmosphere and everything. And it felt like stepping into a proper story, and that really kind of swept me off my feet for the first couple hours. Not feeling like they were wasting time, setting up. You're slowly introducing me to a conflict and getting me acclimated to the world. It's just like, you're here, deal with it. And I really like that approach. It keeps everything from feeling really ham-fisted. And I have like a really love-hate relationship with RPGs, I'm finding. My first thought was, oh, look, there's a lot of skills. And my second thought was like, I don't really care. I wanted to just see how many situations I could talk myself out of. And so it was nice that the dialogue, the voice work, and everything was like really on. I felt like really on par with what I was expecting from like a AAA release. And so it was nice to actually sit down and talk to characters and really like flesh out those conversation trees. But I didn't like that there wasn't a way for me to like, without just sneaking unreliably past enemies, to just like not fight them. Like, I wish I could have talked to them and been like, no, I'm just a traveler dude and leave me alone, that kind of thing. But
Yeah, there was no way to finish the game as a pacifist.
yeah, and I think that's where like the whole Borderlands vibe really comes in, is it's very clear, who is the bad guy, so to speak. The Marauders are 100% just the psychos from Borderlands.
Right.
Shouting and yelling. I mean, they don't say, crazy kooky stuff, but they're essentially the same thing. They behave very similarly, I've found too, which I was having flashbacks a lot. I was like, oh, huh.
Yeah. And see, I don't even think about those guys when I'm playing. I mean, they're just like, I don't know, but
They're just there to blow up and die, basically. I mean, there's not.
yeah. And so they don't have any significance later in the story.
No, not really. No, they're
Interesting.
just basically the Marauders are just people who got fed up with the corporations and took a bunch of drugs that made them crazy. Like that's the explanation in a
And they
nutshell.
have
And I'm like,
no leadership, no like form, no like official or regulated group, that they gather together.
not that I could find. Overall, what is your like impression of the story so far? I know that you had mentioned that you kind of felt like it was following kind of a cadence.
Actually, what I'm thinking of because of our discussion is just I just get the copy and paste feel. And I didn't realize that it was also with enemies as well as with areas, which just sort of makes the experience dull for me personally. And I think just seeing that repetition, even on different planets, you're just walking through these same boxes, the same automatic doors and the same computers. Scientists are wearing the same thing. I mean, there's just so much sameness, and I think that has to do with their budget, I'm sure. But it just made it's made the experience so far a little dull.
And that's what's a little difficult, is that on the one hand, totally it makes sense that it's all visually samey, because even though there's the different corporations, the board rules Halcyon, so like they're just kind of selling everyone the same stuff, but like with a different flavor.
Yeah, well, and I just thought there would be more diversity between each of those corporate bodies, but I'm finding that there's not as much.
And that's definitely where I started to, I think, feel the limitations of what they could pull off. And I definitely started feeling that with the armor sets and everything. I was like, oh man, like every armor set is some variation of the same, like especially with the heavy armor. Like the armor set that I loved was the like mining armor set, which was shared with the iconoclasts,
Okay.
but like which you'll see, as you play through Monarch. But yeah, everything just feels very samey, and it was kind of weird to just keep taking on and off better versions of the same armor.
And the environments themselves are probably the most diverse. But from my experience, I don't know, they're just not very open. Like the way that you have to get around is by using the map in the menu, which is also not very interactive. It's kind of it feels sort of cheapish. You're not able to figure out where you are and where to go just based on looking at your surroundings. So, and it sort of stands out so much because the game begins with this sort of like great example of just being able to notice something in the distance in the environment and being able to walk to it. So you see the sign for Edgewater. By the time that you walk down the hill and get to the ship, you see the sign. It's like out towards the left, and you know where to go. Like you don't have to open up your map or anything like that. You see that moon face thing, Spacer's Choice, and you know where to go. But there's like nothing else in my playthrough so far that is like that. And so I feel like the game's environments are just, they feel so much like caves. You're like always tunneling through, not really knowing where you're at, and not even seeing like where you're going. It just always feels like you're sort of like boxed in.
So like once I got to Monarch, I was fast traveling all the time at that point. Like I had kind of done a lap around Monarch to clear my head because I had some bug that really made me mad. So I just ran around for a while and ended up unlocking all of the fast travel points. And then after that, I was just like.
One of the things that I look for the most in games is like a great sense of exploration, and so that's something that really just sort of knocked the game down a couple of pegs for me personally.
I felt like the sense of adventure was there until I got to Monarch. I think, Roseway, Edgewater, Scylla, like all those places, like I'm like, oh, okay, like a little, like I like the little adventures, because I'm finding more and more that I don't always like getting absorbed into my, RPGs for hours and hours and hours, at a time, which I still did with this game. Now that we're talking about it, it makes me like the game less. Like, I don't feel like I want to go back and replay it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's not good the first time.
Right. And I think it's a good story, and it does things like, it knocks certain things out of the park, which is, I think, dialogue and player choice.
Player choice feels so like people are waiting for someone to come and just change the tide because no one knows how to do it. But it doesn't feel like those insignificant choices. Like I feel like I can make any of the choices that I made, and it's likely going to be better because the status quo just wasn't working. And I love that sense of player choice. There were moments where I'm like, I don't think I really need to have a say in this, or like, I don't think I really need to have a dialogue choice here. But you always run into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I feel like people know enough, I don't know, what the game does well. Because everybody seems to be singing its praises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that largely just comes down to there's been such a RPG drought lately. Like, unless you're going to pay for, Final Fantasy 14 to get a really good campaign with the new campaign that came out that everyone was freaking out about, like, there's really not a lot of really fantastic RPGs out there right now that kind of fit into that first-person Fallout, Skyrim style game, and so I think people were starving for that.
But how will it stand the test of time? I wonder.
I'd say it's going to be a talking piece for the next couple months, but once another decent RPG comes along, it's going to start getting run through the ringer in comparison.
And that might be the Outer Worlds too. Who knows? But
yeah,
I think there is a lot there that they can improve on.
Oh, for sure. I think if they had a bigger budget, and this might kind of encompass all of the technical limitations, I think if they had a bigger budget, they could build their own engine for the game, and it would both look and play a lot better.
I think it's probably they didn't want to diverge too much from the classic formula, and so they made a good game that was obviously reliant on a lot of their previous work. So I just hope that next game in the series would, I guess, press further in some of the things that they were obviously trying to do with something like the party system.
Yeah.
Because some of those interactions, I was like, giddy every time, the camera cut to one of my party members and they would say something and it's like, oh wow, if they weren't here, that conversation wouldn't have happened the way that it just did. So that was really cool and exciting. So I'd hope that they would press further in that direction. But then I also hope that they would like revisit combat, because there's no need to have, that. I just feel like it's so janky still.
I don't want to replay the game right now. I think that's what I've landed on. I think it's good. Let's bring it around a little positive. I think that it's really good. It's worth your time, especially if you have Game Pass for $1. Like, it's an absolute steal.
Oh,
Play the
yeah.
dang game.
Absolutely.
Good. But just go in with your expectations tempered.
Yeah, it's not a perfect game.
This is not a space opera. Like, this is not on par with Star Wars. It's like an episode of Star Trek where, like, the Enterprise got stuck in Halcyon and they just kind of had to make do for the rest of their lives. So there's like that element of sophistication. The story is good. The characters are really good. And like, I was genuinely invested in finishing out, my, Pavarti's and Vicar Max's stories. And I really wanted to, see Halcyon freed by the corporations, if that's kind of the way that you choose. It kind of just landed flat. I ended up having a almost game-breaking bug at the very end of the game, which really made me angry and just was like, I want to just finish this now. I don't want them to stop working on this IP. I think if they refine it and, double down on the good things, refine the things that are kind of half-baked, I think that the next game could be really cool. The way that the story goes at the end, there's this big reveal about, something that happens. And I would love to see the Outer Worlds 2 dive in and answer that question.
So like I said, this is a good game, but it's not a perfect game. There are things that are lacking, things that I don't think will totally jive with all players. But if you're somebody who liked Fallout New Vegas, are you generally like the Bethesda-style RPG? There's definitely something here to love. So those are friends, that I would recommend the game to. This probably won't be a game that I buy for anybody as a gift, but somebody who's really interested in those types of games, that it would be worthwhile. But again, the party members interacting has been super enjoyable, and of course the dialogue and player choice is out of this world, so to speak. Yeah, that's been our discussion of the Outer Worlds and our impressions. Thank you so much, Eli, for taking the lead on this discussion. Yeah, you guys click all the buttons there on YouTube, do what you know how to do, and we will see you next time as we cover things about video games in general, and of course, Beyond Good and Evil 2. Thanks for watching.